I came home at 6:47 in the morning, dead tired, scrubs sticking to my back, hands smelling like antiseptic and stale hospital coffee. And the first thing I noticed was the silence. No soft mechanical hum. No blades turning in the desert wind. Nothing. Just heat. Dry Nevada heat crawling over the dirt like it owned the place. Then I saw the concrete dust. For anchor bolts ripped clean out of the ground. My turbine was gone. Completely gone. And zip-tied to my front gate like some kind of trophy was a bright yellow HOA violation notice that read, "Non-compliant structure removed under community authority." Community authority. Yeah, that phrase hit me harder than the missing turbine did. Because these people genuinely believed they owned everything they could see. My name's Ethan Cole. I'm a respiratory therapist working night shift outside Henderson, single dad, raising my 9-year-old daughter Lily in the same beat-up desert house my grandfather left me 20 years ago. Tin roof, cracked stucco, rusted fencing, one swamp cooler that groans louder than my pickup truck. Meanwhile, the neighborhood around us looks like a luxury resort brochure. 62 stucco homes with imported palm trees, glowing blue pools, Tesla chargers in every garage, fake Tuscan fountains spraying water into the air while the rest of the damn state is begging people to conserve. They built that subdivision around my property 6 years ago, and from day one, the HOA treated my house like a stain they couldn't scrub off the map. Didn't matter that I legally owned every inch of that land before they ever poured a sidewalk. To them, my place ruined their aesthetic cohesion. That's actually the phrase they used. Aesthetic cohesion. Sounds fancy until you realize it's rich people language for, "We hate looking at your poor house." The turbine became their obsession almost immediately. It wasn't huge, maybe 30 feet tall, enough to offset part of my electric bill during the summer, county approved, inspected, fully permitted. But every HOA meeting somehow circled back to it. It casts visual clutter. It affects property values. It disrupts the Mediterranean identity of the community. One woman actually called it emotionally aggressive. I swear to God she said that with a straight face. And leading all of it was Randall Pierce, HOA president, real estate developer smile, white teeth too perfect to trust, always wearing loafers without socks like he was auditioning to be a yacht villain in a Netflix show. That man hated me, not because I broke rules, because I existed outside his control. There's a difference. See, people like Randall don't just want compliance, they want submission. They need everybody trimmed, painted, approved, regulated. Same mailbox color. Same grass height, same approved shade of beige misery. And my house sat right in the middle of his perfect little kingdom, like a middle finger made out of adobe brick. So when I saw that citation, I already knew he'd finally crossed the line. The paper claimed the turbine violated revised HOA covenants passed 8 months earlier, and because the structure was inconsistent with modern architectural standards, they had exercised emergency authority to remove it. Emergency authority over a legally permitted turbine on private land. These idiots didn't even understand jurisdiction. They fined me $3,000 for visual contamination and gave me 10 days to remove the remaining concrete foundation before additional penalties kicked in. I remember standing there laughing, not because it was funny, but because I was too exhausted to process how insane it was. Lily opened the front door rubbing her eyes and asked me, "Daddy, where'd the wind thing go?" And that question stuck in my chest harder than anything Randall ever said, because that turbine mattered to her. We built parts of it together, painted the base together. During the summer, she used to count the rotations when she couldn't sleep. And some smug HOA clown decided he had the right to tear it down while I was working overnight, keeping strangers alive on ventilators. That's the kind of thing that changes a man. Not instantly, slowly, quietly, like a fuse burning inside a wall. So I walked into the house, poured stale coffee into a mug that still had yesterday's lipstick stain from Lily pretending to drink grown-up coffee, and started digging through my grandfather's old filing cabinet. I wasn't even looking for revenge at first. Honestly, I just wanted proof. Something showing these people couldn't legally touch my property. But about 20 minutes later, buried under yellowed tax records and utility maps, I found a folded easement agreement dated 1999. And the second I read page 3, everything changed. Because sitting behind the gated entrance of that luxury subdivision, hidden behind decorative hedges and fake stone walls, was a power transformer station. One transformer feeding every single house in that development. and according to the easement agreement, it was sitting on my land. The access rights expired 3 years earlier. Never renewed. Never renegotiated. Never updated. I just sat there staring at the paper while the desert wind rattled the kitchen window, and for the first time all morning, I smiled. Not a happy smile either. The kind of smile you get when somebody finally pushes you 1 inch too far without realizing they're standing on a trapdoor. Now let me pause the story for a second, because if you've never dealt with an HOA before, this next part probably sounds insane. Like, how could these people legally remove somebody's property and think they'd get away with it? Well, here's the thing. According to standard procedure, most HOAs survive on one simple assumption. Homeowners either don't know the rules or they're too intimidated to fight back. That's the whole machine. Paperwork, violation letters, legal-sounding threats, fines stacking up every week until people just comply because it's easier than conflict. And honestly, most of the time it works. Especially against regular people working jobs, raising kids, trying to survive. Guys like Randall count on exhaustion. They weaponize inconvenience. But from a legal perspective, HOAs are nowhere near as powerful as people think they are. They can enforce community covenants inside their jurisdiction, sure, but they can't magically override county permits, property deeds, utility easements, or state infrastructure laws just because somebody at a board meeting gets emotional about community appearance. That's where Randall made the fatal mistake. He stopped thinking like an administrator and started thinking like a king. And trust me, that happens a lot in these neighborhoods. Tiny positions of authority do weird things to people. This is a psychological trap called perceived territorial dominance. When somebody controls a space long enough, they begin believing they own not just the property, but the people inside it too. Randall didn't see me as an equal property owner. In his mind, I was an obstacle ruining the fantasy he sold to wealthy buyers. So the turbine wasn't really about aesthetics. It was symbolic. Every time he looked at it spinning above my roofline, it reminded him there was one thing inside his perfect little gated kingdom he couldn't control. And people obsessed with control eventually overplay their hand. They always do. The lesson here is, paperwork matters more than appearances, and arrogance makes people careless. Because while Randall was busy obsessing over how my property looked from the street, he completely ignored the legal foundation underneath the entire neighborhood. And in places like Nevada, during triple-digit summer heat, messing around with electrical infrastructure isn't just stupid, it can become catastrophic real fast. I called my buddy Marcus the same afternoon. Marcus had been an industrial electrician for almost 20 years, the kind of guy who could look at a transformer panel for 5 seconds and tell you exactly which contractor cut corners during installation. He came over around sunset carrying a faded toolbox and a gas station soda the size of a fire extinguisher. I handed him the easement paperwork without saying a word. He read it once, then looked up at me and started laughing so hard he nearly spilled his drink all over my kitchen table. "Ethan," he said, wiping tears from his eyes, "these people ripped out your turbine while sitting on an expired utility easement?" I nodded. He shook his head slowly like he'd just witnessed a man punch a grizzly bear in the face. "Buddy, you don't understand. You basically own the throat they breathe through." And that's when the mood changed. Up until then I'd been angry, hurt, tired. But now I was focused, calm, which honestly is a lot more dangerous. Because rage burns hot and stupid. Calm revenge is organized. The next morning, I mailed certified notices to the HOA board, the property management company, and the utility subcontractor responsible for maintaining the transformer site. I kept the language professional, almost boring. Due to expired easement conditions and concerns regarding electrical load capacity, temporary infrastructure limitations will be implemented pending safety review. That's it. No threats. No screaming. Just paperwork. And let me tell you something. Rich people panic when regular folks start using calm legal language. By day 3, things started getting uncomfortable inside the subdivision. I disabled secondary load access connected to the transformer easement. Translation? The decorative nonsense went dark first. Pool heaters shut off. Landscape lighting died. EV charging stations stopped working. The giant illuminated waterfall at the entrance sputtered out like a dying casino sign. You could practically hear the HOA Facebook group catching fire from 3 blocks away. One homeowner drove past my property slow enough for me to see her filming my house through the passenger window. Another guy yelled, "You can't do this," while standing beside a Mercedes SUV plugged into a dead charger. Funny thing is, I absolutely could. According to the inspection reports Marcus helped me pull, the transformer was dangerously overloaded already. The neighborhood had expanded power usage every year. More Teslas, more pool systems, more outdoor kitchens, more air-conditioned garages, but nobody ever upgraded the infrastructure. Why? Because infrastructure isn't sexy. HOA boards love spending money on fountains and clubhouse renovations because residents can see those things. Nobody claps for electrical upgrades buried behind walls. So they ignored it, year after year. Meanwhile, the transformer kept absorbing more load like an old boxer taking punches to the ribs. By day 7, the temperature hit 113 degrees. The desert air outside felt like opening an oven door directly into your lungs. Lily and I stayed mostly inside with blackout curtains closed while I monitored the load reports Marcus helped me set up. And that's when Randall showed up personally. White polo shirt soaked through with sweat stains under the arms, sunglasses pushed up on his forehead, trying desperately to look in control while heat waves melted the neighborhood behind him. He walked right onto my property without asking permission and tossed another violation letter onto my porch. "You're disrupting community operations," he snapped. "You're creating liability exposure." I actually laughed at that. Liability exposure. Coming from the guy who illegally removed permitted equipment off private land. I handed him a folder. Inside was a full proposal: turbine replacement cost, installation reimbursement, transformer upgrade estimate, and a renewed 20-year easement contract with prepaid annual access fees. Total came out to just over $126,000. Randall flipped through the pages, scoffed, and said, "You think you can extort this community?" I leaned against the porch rail and shrugged. "No, Randall. I think your community built itself on expired paperwork." God, he hated that answer. You could see it in his face. The man wasn't used to losing verbal exchanges. People usually folded under his confidence. But confidence works differently when somebody else controls the electricity, keeping your wine fridge cold. He stepped closer and lowered his voice like we were in some crime movie. "You have no idea who you're messing with." And I remember smiling, because that line always sounds terrifying right before somebody completely destroys their own life. "Actually," I said, "I think you're just now figuring out who you messed with." He stormed off after that. No negotiation. No compromise. Pride wouldn't let him. And honestly, if he'd just apologized at that point, none of what happened next would have happened. That's the crazy part. People think disasters come from evil masterminds, but most disasters really come from insecure men refusing to admit they made a mistake. Day 10 arrived with a heat advisory warning across Clark County. Forecast temperature, 117 degrees. Local news stations literally told residents not to leave pets outside longer than 5 minutes. By noon, the asphalt in the subdivision looked soft enough to spread with a butter knife. Every AC unit in the neighborhood was screaming at full capacity, trying to hold back the heat. Marcus called me around 9:40 that morning. "Transformers peaking," he said quietly. "Way above safe threshold." I looked out the kitchen window toward the distant stucco rooftops shimmering under the sun and felt this weird pit in my stomach. Because despite everything, I didn't actually want innocent families getting hurt. I wanted accountability. There's a difference. At exactly 10:12 a.m., the transformer failed. No explosion, no dramatic Hollywood fireball, just a heavy metallic thunk that echoed across the desert, followed by silence. Total silence. Then came the screaming. Garage doors froze halfway open. Pool systems died instantly. Air conditioners shut off across 62 homes at the exact same moment. And within minutes, that neighborhood turned into a microwave. Heat moves fast in the desert when buildings lose climate control. Fast enough to scare you. By 11 a.m., indoor temperatures had already crossed 90 degrees in several homes. Elderly residents started collapsing from heat exhaustion. One family with a newborn wrapped the baby in cold towels and sat inside their SUV with the engine running because it was safer than their house. Refrigerators failed. Medication spoiled. One homeowner smashed his own patio window trying to create airflow after electronic shutters locked shut during the outage. And the HOA emergency hotline? Completely overwhelmed. Hundreds of calls in under an hour. Around noon, I saw ambulances entering the subdivision one after another. Lily looked at me from the couch and asked quietly, "Daddy, did we do something bad?" That question hit harder than Randall's threats ever could. I sat beside her and told her the truth. No, sweetheart. Some people ignored problems until they became emergencies. Because that's exactly what happened. The turbine wasn't the real issue. The expired easement wasn't even the real issue. The real issue was arrogance. Years of it. Years of people believing money and authority made them untouchable. But desert heat doesn't care how expensive your house is. Physics doesn't care about HOA status. Electricity definitely doesn't care about community aesthetics. By 2 p.m., the residents turned on Randall. Hard. Videos from the emergency HOA meeting started circulating almost immediately. People screaming over each other, drenched in sweat, furious about hidden maintenance reports showing the transformer overload risks had been ignored for years. Then came the final bombshell. Randall had ordered my turbine removed without a full board vote, meaning the HOA's insurance wouldn't protect him personally. The second homeowners heard that, his support evaporated. Just gone. One woman apparently stood up during the meeting and shouted, "You picked a fight over landscaping and got our power shut off." Honestly, fair point. Around sunset, 3 board members, the HOA attorney, and a crowd of exhausted residents walked all the way to my property together. I'll never forget that image. Wealthy people in designer clothes drenched with sweat, standing outside my rusted gate looking like survivors from a disaster movie. The attorney, Denise Holloway, did most of the talking. Smart woman. Calm voice. Unlike Randall, she understood reality had changed. "Mr. Cole," she said carefully, "the board would like to resolve this matter immediately." I handed her a revised contract already sitting on my porch table. Easement renewal. Full reimbursement for the turbine. Infrastructure upgrade funding. Mandatory independent inspections moving forward. My written approval required before any future modifications affecting the transformer site. They didn't even negotiate much. That's how panic works. Pride disappears once indoor temperatures hit 100 degrees. One resident signed before the attorney even finished reading. Another guy muttered, "Just turn the damn power back on." And the wildest part? I wasn't even enjoying it anymore. That surprised me. You spend so much time imagining revenge feels satisfying. But when people are genuinely scared, when kids are crying and elderly folks are getting loaded into ambulances, the victory starts tasting bitter. Still, consequences matter. Actions matter. Randall spent years treating people like obstacles instead of neighbors, and eventually, he pushed the wrong person too far. By 8:30 p.m., temporary load balancing systems were restored under Marcus's supervision. Air conditioners flickered back to life one neighborhood section at a time. You could literally hear the entire subdivision exhale together. That low electrical hum returned across the valley like civilization rebooting itself. 3 days later, contractors installed my replacement turbine at HOA expense. Bigger model too. Taller. Quieter. More efficient. Funny how quickly community aesthetics stop mattering once people spend 12 hours cooking inside million-dollar homes. And Randall? Last I heard, multiple homeowners sued him personally after insurance refused coverage for unauthorized property destruction and negligence claims. Haven't seen him since. But every now and then, when the wind picks up at sunset and the turbine blades start turning over the desert again, I catch residents slowing down outside my property. Nobody complains anymore. Nobody sends letters. They just look up at that turbine spinning against the orange sky and keep driving. You know what still makes me laugh about this whole thing? It was never really about the turbine. That's what took me a while to understand. Randall kept saying words like property values and community standards, but deep down, this whole mess started because one guy couldn't stand seeing something he didn't control. And honestly, that happens everywhere, not just HOAs. Some people see independence as disrespect. They look at somebody living differently and immediately assume it's some kind of challenge to their authority. My little desert house embarrassed them because it reminded them their expensive gated community wasn't as perfect as they pretended it was. And instead of accepting that, they tried to erase it. That's usually where power trips begin, not with huge, evil plans, but with small, unchecked entitlement slowly growing into arrogance. According to standard procedure, HOA boards are supposed to protect shared property interests, maintain infrastructure, and prevent conflicts before they escalate. But the second leadership becomes emotional instead of practical. Everything starts rotting underneath the surface. That neighborhood spent years investing in appearances while ignoring the systems actually keeping people safe. Fancy fountains, decorative lighting, imported palm trees. Meanwhile, the transformer carrying the electrical load for 62 homes was aging toward failure one overheated summer at a time. From a legal perspective, the situation became a perfect storm of negligence. Unauthorized property removal, expired easement agreements, ignored infrastructure warnings. Every bad decision stacked on top of another until eventually reality collected the bill. And reality always collects eventually. Doesn't matter how rich somebody is. Doesn't matter how many lawyers they hire. Physics, contracts, and heat don't care about social status. This is a psychological trap a lot of communities fall into. People become so obsessed with controlling appearances that they stop respecting boundaries. They confuse influence with ownership. Randall genuinely believed being HOA president gave him the right to decide what belonged in the neighborhood, even when the property legally wasn't his. That mindset destroys trust fast. Because once authority stops following rules themselves, nobody feels protected anymore. They feel managed, controlled, and resentment grows quietly until one bad moment blows everything apart. The lesson here is, never underestimate the quiet person everybody assumes is powerless, especially the exhausted single parent working night shifts while everybody else sleeps. People like that usually know how to survive pressure better than anyone. They know patience. They know sacrifice. And most importantly, they know exactly how much they can endure before they stop backing down. I still live in the same house. Same rusted fence. Same cracked driveway. Lily's older now, taller every month, and every once in a while she still sits outside counting turbine rotations when the wind gets strong enough. The neighborhood around us looks calmer these days too. Fewer violation letters. Fewer anonymous complaints. Amazing what happens after an entire community spends one afternoon realizing the guy they mocked actually understood the infrastructure keeping their lives comfortable. And maybe that's the strangest part of all this. I never wanted to beat anybody. I just wanted respect. Basic respect. The kind neighbors are supposed to give each other before lawyers, fines, and ego get involved. But some people only learn limits after consequences hit them personally. So now I'm curious what you think. Was I justified for pushing back the way I did? Or should I have taken the high road after they removed the turbine? And be honest, because if you've ever dealt with an HOA before, you probably already know exactly how fast community standards can turn into somebody else's personal power trip.